Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has delivered his first speech since defeating Morgan Tsvangirai in the July 31st polls. He once again told off critics of his re-election. President Mugabe was speaking at the annual celebrations to commemorate war heroes who lost their lives in the country's liberation war. Tsvangirai, who is challenging President Mugabe's victory in court, boycotted the celebrations.
Zimbabwe shall never be a colony again. Never, 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 ever.
A fresh mandate with a familiar ring to it. Buoyed by the partisan crowd, President Mugabe took a swipe at the MDC and the Western governments that have questioned the credibility of the recent polls.
We are delivering democracy in a platter, on a platter. Do you take it? We say take it or leave it. But the people have delivered it. And forward ever, never will we go back on our achievement, on our victory.
The opposition MDC has filed an application with the Constitutional Court seeking nullification of the outcome, which gave Mugabe 61% of the vote. Mugabe issued a chilling response to the challenge.
Those who are crying about this result can go and hang themselves.
A ruling on the MDC's application is due within 12 days.
Well, the incoming government certainly has its work cut out for it. President Robert Mugabe spelt out some of the challenges on the economic, agricultural and manufacturing fronts, amongst others. He, however, exuded confidence that now that ZANU-PF is in government by itself, it can deliver the goods. Farai Mwakutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, here is a brief look as to why Robert Mugabe's election victory is being challenged in court. Now, Robert Mugabe won the July 31st elections with 61% of the votes cast, compared to his opponent Morgan Tsvangirai, who managed 34%. Tsvangirai rejected the results, claiming that the polls were marred by massive rigging. Mugabe dismissed the claims and insisted that elections were free and fair. Tsvangirai then sought to challenge the outcome in court and is now seeking a rerun. His lawyers filed an appeal with the Constitutional Court on Friday. The Constitutional Court is expected to discuss the petition this week. It has up to 2 weeks to deliver its verdict. Tsvangirai's case is mainly based on alleged manipulation of the voters' roll. African and regional monitors praised the polls as credible, but the West has criticized the vote. Well, let's now get more on the development in Zimbabwe. We're joined live by Kelvin Jakachira, an editor of a Zimbabwe local radio station. Kelvin, thank you very much for joining us here on Africa Live. Now, are both the MDC and ZANU-PF political parties likely to respect the verdict of the Constitutional Court when it is given regarding the election petition?
Yes, in my view, I think both parties are most likely going to accept the verdict of the court. But it is important to note that I doubt very much that the MDC is hoping to get a positive result. I think what they want to really do is just to undermine the legitimacy of the victory by President Mugabe and ZANU-PF. But I mean, ZANU-PF on its part, I believe they are hoping that they will get a positive result, given that SADC and the AU observer missions have given thumbs up to the election which they won.
Well, Mugabe is insisting that his opponents represent the interests of Western countries. Is there a fair assessment of the situation?
The MDC itself as a political party has failed to shake off that perception that they are representing the interests of the West, because you recall that during the run-up to the elections, debates, for instance, in the House of Commons in England. MPs were debating, clearly favouring the ouster of Robert Mugabe at the elections and favouring the MDC. And also you recall that the MDC was unable to properly articulate its position on issues to do with gays and lesbians, and also their position on indigenization was not very clear. So that itself, to the common man, it gives the impression that they are representing the interests of the white capital.
Well, Kevin, in the event that Tsvangirai loses the case in court, though, will that signal an end to his political career?
It really depends on how he is going to handle the whole issue, because his defeat at the polls really shook his authority in the MDC. But most likely what he will do is that he will continue to send the perception that he was robbed of victory, so that he maintains that image of a person with the bravado to continue challenging Robert Mugabe and ZANU-PF.
Well, Kevin, let's look at another case scenario here, that in the event the court orders a rerun of the presidential election, can Zimbabwe, though, finance that election?
It's very unlikely that Zimbabwe will be able to mobilize the funds needed to hold an election, given that during the run-up to this election, the finance minister himself at Ndaibiti was continuously saying that the country is unable to finance the elections. So in the event that there is going to be a rerun, I don't see Zimbabwe being able to mobilize the required millions of US dollars to finance this election. Most probably what will happen is that we'll have an underfunded election, which will be very chaotic in my own view.
All right, Kelvin Jakachira, an editor of a Zimbabwean radio station, joining us live from Harare. Thank you very much for your insights. Well, to stay with us here on Africa Live, as still ahead on the program. Credibility test. Irregularities already being cited by one camp in Mali's presidential runoff. And we have the latest update on the still hospitalized Nelson Mandela. We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need to trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world. Welcome back to Africa Live on CCTV News with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Now, vote counting is currently underway in Mali after polling stations closed Sunday evening. Thousands of Malians braved the rain to cast their ballots in a presidential runoff that pitted former Prime Minister Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta against ex-Finance Minister Malia Cisse. Noel Mwakugu now reports.
Polling stations closed late on Sunday, marking an end of the presidential runoff, which passed without serious incidents being reported. The head of the AU observers told reporters on Sunday night that his team had not seen any conduct that was dubious during the runoff.
In all the voting stations, Overall, everything went well. There was nothing dubious.
Earlier in the day, African observers were in Timbuktu, the ancient desert city in Mali's north, to make sure that polling was conducted according to international standards. A record 49% of 6.8 million registered voters turned out to cast their ballots in the first round of the election last month. Observers told Reuters news agency that participation appeared to be slightly lower for the runoff, but the vote had been peaceful and free of major technical problems.
Thank
God. From morning until now, everything has gone well, until the last minute, when the police arrested some people at voting offices number 4 and number 8 for fraud. Besides that, everything went well here.
It was former Prime Minister Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's race to lose after winning nearly 40% of the first round vote and receiving endorsement from almost all the other candidates. He faced former Finance Minister Soumaïla Cissé, and results of the runoff are expected by Friday. Mali's next president will be tasked with not only building the country's shattered economy, but also resolving a simmering dispute with the separatist movement in the far north. Noel Makugu, CCTV.
Well, let's get an update on Mali's presidential elections. CCTV's Kate Parkinson joins us now from Mali's capital, Bamako. Kate, can you give us the latest on the vote counting process? Is there any indication of which presidential candidate is currently in the lead?
I can tell you, Beatrice, it's a slow process. Vote counting does take time here in Mali. Given the size of the country, it's twice the size of France, and the terrible infrastructure and the problems logistically moving those votes around the country and getting them all counted, it does take time. We don't have any official figures for you yet, but a member of Sissé's campaign team had said earlier today that they thought about 10% of the vote counting was complete. We don't have any verification of that. That's just their point of view. But if that is true, it gives you a sense of just how long this is going to take. As for who the expected winner is, well, it's been predicted that Ibrahim Boubacar Keita would be the winner from the outset, even before the first round. And Malian journalists who have been monitoring this election across the country are saying it's looking increasingly likely that he is going to win. A member of IBK's campaign team, as he's known across Mali by his initials, IBK, has said that here in Bamako, he is set to win 80% of the vote. Again, that's not an official figure, that's just from Keita's campaign team, but it gives you an idea of just how things are unfolding here in Mali as the country waits tentatively to find out who its next president is.
All right, CCTV's Kate Parkinson joining us there from Mali's capital, Bamako. Let's now head north, where Egypt's Prosecutor General has announced that former President Mohamed Morsi will be detained for a further 15 days pending investigations on accusations of espionage. Meanwhile, there are conflicting reports on whether the government is on the verge of beginning a clear out of the sit-in by Muslim Brotherhood supporters, or if authorities have decided to delay dispersing the protesters. CCTV's Yasser Hakim takes a closer look.
A minor flood of sewage water on Wednesday, an electricity blackout on Saturday night, and strong rumors of an imminent attack on Monday morning. These are all part of a psychological game being played out by the interim government against the Muslim Brotherhood protesters.
The government is trying to use all peaceful means to disperse them. I expect they will repeat their warnings so that more people leave the sit-in peacefully. Water cannons and tear gas could then be used in the clear-out first. It could turn violent because there is evidence of weapons with the protesters, and if used, then the police will hit back.
The protesters seem defiant. Although a small number have left the sit-in, there still remain thousands camped inside, not willing to leave, in spite of the threats of force. The latest decision by the Prosecutor General to extend Morsi's detention by another 15 days for accusations of espionage further aggravated his supporters.
If the police attack the sit-in, it will be a massacre, and if they succeed, we will all move to Tahrir and Presidential Palace to continue our demonstrations until the president is free.
The interim leadership says it has exhausted all possible means to end the stalemate peacefully. It received foreign envoys and officials to mediate. It has called on the Muslim Brotherhood to join the interim government. And lately, Al-Azhar invited all political forces for peace talks, but to no avail.
After the failure of the mediation efforts, the government has no option now but to end the sit-in by force if needed. The Prime Minister has given the green light to the Minister of Interior to move in when he sees appropriate strategically.
The government is under pressure from the millions who went down to the streets on the 26th of July to give Minister of Defense Abdel Fattah al-Sisi the mandate to clean up the sit-ins. They are demanding action now.
There are weapons in the sit-ins and many people were confirmed killed by the Muslim Brotherhood last month. Every lost day means stronger resistance by the Brotherhood. We should not waste any more time.
In the meantime, for both sides of the conflict, the waiting continues.
Al-Sisi is considered a hero to Egyptians who backed the ouster of Mohamed Morsi, but he is at a critical stage now. He loses followers every time he delays the ending of the sit-in. But he could lose more if the clear-out ends with bloodshed and killings. Experts say Al-Sisi's next decision will surely shape Egypt's future. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Well, let's now get the latest news on Egypt's crisis, and CCTV's Yasser Hakim joins us live from Cairo. Yasser, there are reports that the former President Mohamed Morsi will be detained for a further 15 days pending investigations on accusations of what the government is calling espionage. What is the reaction to this?
The reaction probably came mostly from the pro-Morsi supporters, and they marched to the office of the Prosecutor General, who came up with the decision to detain the former president, and they demonstrated in front of the building, and also they tried to break into the building, but the police have stopped them. They later left the place, but they say they will be back again until the Prosecutor General is sacked. They say he's a Prosecutor General who is corrupt and is not being fair in dealing with the former president. But still, the investigation is still ongoing with the Mohamed Morsi and his aides and assistants on several cases, not just espionage, but also inciting violence and breaking out of jail during the 2011 revolution.
Well, yes, sir. What about those reports suggesting that the authorities have delayed plans to end the sit-ins in Cairo? What more can you tell us about that?
It's all speculation, actually. The government only said that it will clear out or clean out or break out or break up the sit-ins. It did not say how or when. It only said that it will try all options, all peaceful options, before resorting to force. Now, what happened in the morning when everyone was waiting for the news that the clear-up will begin, the government denied. It later denied that it has given any orders for the cleanup or clear-out on Monday morning. And it seems that the government is taking its is trying to be as patient as possible until all means, peaceful means, negotiations and mediation are all exhausted, and there will be no other option except force. Up until now, the presidential team itself is divided between ones who are pro-ending the sit-ins as quickly as possible and with force, and another part of the presidential team says that peace talks should be given more time. I think that's the whole dilemma of the that's facing the interim president and his aides.
All right, CCTV's Yasser Hakim joining us live from Cairo. Thank you. Now, former South African President Nelson Mandela continues to make a slow but steady improvement in hospital, and that's according to President Jacob Zuma's office. Mr. Mandela has been in hospital for 2 months now, receiving treatment for a recurring lung infection. CCTV's Guy Henderson sent this update from Johannesburg.
Now, in the presidential statement released on Sunday, Mac Maharaj specifically referenced a reiteration by the doctors that Mr. Mandela's condition remained critical. So yes, his health is steadily improving, but clearly he is still a very sick man. Now, a visiting church group had last week reported back to journalists that doctors had said that Mr. Mandela was now able to respond at least to the presence of visitors. We've also had on Friday his granddaughter Zinzi Mandela saying that she didn't feel like he was going to be going anywhere anytime soon. By that she means, of course, that he's unlikely to be released from hospital at this stage. And we also had last week comments from his former wife, Winnie Mandela, who's visited him almost every day since he was hospitalised. Her saying that he has continually had to undergo a medical procedure to remove fluid from his lungs. So more than 2 months into his hospitalisation, clearly that recurring lung infection is still in need of constant treatment. Guy Henderson, CCTV, Johannesburg.
Well, let's take another break now on Africa Live, but still ahead on the program. We examine the impact of the breakaway region of Puntland cutting off ties with Mogadishu. The Somali federal government's hopes of rebuilding the fractured nation have suffered a setback. The northern region of Puntland has severed ties with the capital, and there are fears the breakaway could stoke yet more clan-based conflict. CCTV's Mohammed Hirmogi has this report.
Puntland forms the very tip of the Horn of Africa. Its leaders declared its autonomy in 1998, but it did recognize the federal government in Mogadishu. Now it's severing its ties. It's accused Mogadishu of refusing to share power, resources and foreign aid.
I can confirm for you that all the reasons Puntland is giving are genuine. There's no power sharing, federalism has not been implemented, and reconciliation has not been achieved. There's no harmony between the religions and the central government. The central government has absolutely nothing.
The federal government has not officially responded to the decision, but some members of the federal parliament are calling for calm.
There are challenges, and I call upon President Farule to be calm. And if he was rushed into this decision by danger, he should reconsider and think things over before enforcing and breaking all ties.
Somalia is emerging from more than 2 decades of civil war that polarized and divided the country into clan-ruled regions. Several areas such as Somaliland oppose central control, and Puntland's decision to break ties comes at a particularly difficult time for Mogadishu. Tensions have been rising between the central administration and the self-established Jubaland administration in southern Somalia. And now there are fears that Puntland's breakaway could fuel inter-clan rivalry. Mohammed Hirmogi, CCTV, Mogadishu.
Well, Sudan has been experiencing cases of mycetoma, a bacterial and fungal infection which can spread throughout the body, resulting in gross deformity and even death. Now, researchers have been studying the condition since colonial times. The Khartoum Center has been globally recognized for its work, And such acknowledgement in the health field is unusual for a country that ranks near the bottom of a UN Human Development Index measuring income, health and education. Now, with bandages on their swollen, deformed feet, patients from across the vast country trooped to the spotless facilities set in a garden in the southern Khartoum district of Soba. Mycetoma is endemic in a geographic belt that includes regional neighbors Chad, Niger, Nigeria, Ethiopia and even Somalia. Now, the Great Wildebeest Migration between Tanzania and Kenya is considered one of the most spectacular natural events in the world. Thousands of animals in search of fresh grazing lands embark on an epic journey. But Africa as a whole is rich in abundant wildlife. CCTV's Travis Andrews tells us how South Africa treasures its own wildlife.
While South Africans have quite an affinity for the Big Five, it's considered a national treasure. And even some sports teams are named after the animals, like the Lions in South African rugby. Now, the Big Five, of course, refers to Africa's best-known safari animals, namely the elephant, the buffalo, the rhino, the leopard, and the lion. Now, South Africa has become a highly sought-after travel destination and relies heavily on wildlife tourism and the much-needed revenue from international visitors. Game parks play a very big part of that, with the majority of the top game viewing opportunities happening in the Kruger National Park. Lions are always a favorite holiday snap from international visitors. Sadly, the rhino suffers a very different fate. Latest figures indicate that 334 rhinos have been killed in this year alone, and that would be alarming authorities. Now, wildlife and the Big Five in particular also has a significance in the lives of all South Africans, because just until recently, every one of the Big Five were emblazoned across South African banknotes. That honor has now been bestowed upon another national hero, Nelson Mandela. From a very early age, all South African school children are taught about the country's wildlife and the significance thereof. But most importantly, that South Africa is Big Five country. Travis Andrews, CCTV, Cape Town.